Okay, so this is part two of the Renaissance PowerPoint series, part one on chapter 13.1 and 13.2. So if you're watching this video first, then you need to stop and go watch part one of part one Renaissance video series before you move on to part two. But those of you guys that are ready, we're on question 7, halfway through. We were talking about medieval art and how it focused on the Catholic Church and all things church related. But then we were moving on to Renaissance art and how Renaissance art is different. Renaissance art and literature both focused a lot more on individuals and worldly matters, secular matters. Secular matters are things that are not related to the church, along with still a lot of famous paintings about Christianity. For example, some paintings you guys would be really familiar with, such as the Sistine Chapel, the ceiling that's painted on the church in Italy, or The Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci. Those are both religious in nature. So there are still religious paintings during the Renaissance. Don't get me wrong. Some of the most famous religious paintings are from the Renaissance period, but Renaissance artists really step out, they break the mold, and they're willing to paint and build lots of other types of subject matter, secular subject matter, worldly matters, and just individual portraits and things like that. Everything's not solely based on religion. If you still need more time for question 7, then push pause here, because here we go. So let's talk about the art a little bit. One of the things that makes Renaissance art so famous now is that a lot of the advancements that art had at the time revolutionized the art industry and really made an impact on the types of paintings that you see throughout the Renaissance period. For one thing, there's new technology available that allowed them to create more colors than had ever been available during the medieval period. And obviously, with more color choices, you're going to be able to get more realistic looking paintings. So that's one thing right there. Secondly, the generalized style, what was in fashion to do, was to try to be as realistic as possible. So a lot of artists would study human anatomy, would study the human form, and try to make as realistic looking figures as they possibly could. Something that helped them to do this was a technique called perspective. Perspective means achieving a three-dimensional look in your painting. Because when you're looking at a painting on a wall, of course it is flat. Of course it's two-dimensional. It's not actually popping out at you. But you can achieve that 3D kind of technique, making it look like something is in the background and then something's closer to you in the foreground by using something called perspective. And they give you an example of perspective there in that painting on the right of the slide, if you take a look at that. Okay, here's another example here. Here's a painting where we're going to look at the section with the guitar. It actually looks like the guitar is coming out at us at an angle because of the trick of perspective, that three-dimensional look. So if you look, there is multiple perspectives. The book looks like it's coming out towards you, right? And one book looks like it's a little further out than the other book. Even though everything's actually flat, it's making it look three-dimensional. So that's what perspective is, going back to that slide, achieving a three-dimensional effect in a painting. So you want to make sure that you remember that one. Hint, hint, wink, wink. That's definitely going to show up on a test. If you need more time for slide 8, then push pause. Here we go. Oh, another example of perspective there. Again, it looks like the building is in the background and you have people in the foreground closer to you. Okay. All right, question 9 brings us to engineering. So art is not the only thing that gets a facelift during the Renaissance period of time. There's also a lot of new achievements in engineering and building, okay, and architecture. Building techniques allow something that had already been in existence, the dome, to go from something that they were able to do only to a certain size to get much larger domes built out of new type of materials like brick, such as the one that's on the left there. And they were really commonly used. They were popular during the Renaissance period, especially on churches, especially large churches called cathedrals. So you're able to get new engineering techniques. So there's these huge domes. And remember, there's a lot of engineering involved in that, a lot of math, because you had to have the weight just right to be able to hold all the sides steady without them collapsing in on each other and killing everybody underneath, right? So engineering is important on a dome. And because they figure out new techniques in engineering, they're able to change out different types of materials to make domes look different and bigger. There's a guy named Bernicelli who becomes a really famous dome designer. He makes the insides of his dome dimensional. If you could look at the picture there on the right, it kind of gives you an example of that. Okay. Here's some more examples of his work. Famous dome buildings that you can find in Italy. Okay. And just giving an example of domes back in the day in comparison to now as we've improved our math and engineering techniques. If you look at the blue dome, that's a Roman dome. Okay, so yes, we've had domes already. You guys you might remember studying domes back in the Rome unit 1. So they've been around for, several hundred years by the time we get to the Renaissance. But what's different about them is look at the size of the blue building on the chart there, and then look at the size of the pink building, St. Peter's in Rome. Okay, that was built during the Renaissance. So you're obviously able, through engineering techniques, to create much larger, massive domes that were built out of different types of materials. And here's just some examples of domes around the world. All right. And that's it. Okay. You have just completed part 1 Renaissance on 13.1, 13.2. Okay. This is the second video. So we're in part 2 of the video for part 1 on the Renaissance lecture series. So hopefully you got everything down that you needed to get down. Don't forget to make your questions on the left-hand side and create a summary using those left-hand side questions, about 2 sentences per left-hand side question, to build up your summary and get a nice beefy paragraph by the time you're done. And you're going to turn all that in together, so staple your summary onto your notes. I'll see you guys in class. See you later. Bye.